I am so excited for this interview and presentation. This is Dr. Sotiris Nikolopoulos. Took me a while to learn how to say your name right. And welcome to our NUMI week. We're so excited that you could join us this week.
It's a pleasure, always a pleasure to talk with new me,
Oh, thank you.
especially with you.
Oh, ditto times 10. I had the joy of Shannon and I actually had the joy of being with Dr. Nikolopoulos and his family when we were in Greece. And we had a lot of time, he and I had a lot of time together, and we had time with our families. And it was on a 1 to 10, it was about 1,000. And so we just love it. Shannon fell in love with, she really fell in love with your wife, needless to say. And who wouldn't, right? And
Yeah,
his
same.
daughters are just amazing. So, well, uh, he's prepared a slide presentation, and we'll go through that now. And then after the presentation, I will ask questions. I don't have them written down because I haven't formed him yet, but as he goes, I'm sure I'll write them down and we'll go from there. Okay?
So this is a slide that shows how life goes on inside our cells. We are an organism that is made of around 31 trillion cells, and each one of them has this order of molecules inside it. There's the DNA that we inherited from our parents. The DNA, actually, parts of the DNA make the so-called active genes, okay, which they're going to give you your mRNA, and the mRNA is going to give you the proteins. So this dogma was around since biology was started, but in the very recent years, the scientists found that there's a big issue of the so-called epigenetics, which is what the red letters that you see on the top next to the DNA shown. It's the histones modification, the DNA methylation, and some molecules like the microRNAs and long non-copying RNAs that they don't encode for anything. But all these things actually control how life goes on and how active your genes are and how differences among individuals exist. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is a slide that shows what epigenetics is and what we so-called epigenetics factors, all these epigenetic factors, control our cells and how life goes on. So the DNA is in the center, so this is what we inherited from our parents, but the epigenetics, which is very important around the DNA, all these chemical modifications and these small molecules that I mentioned before, is what make changes and make things different from each individual to individual. So around in this circle, you see all these so-called epigenetic factors. You see nutrition, drugs, disease exposure, environmental correlations, microbiome, smoking, even the psychological status or the way of thinking, your personality is very important epigenetic factors that control how our genes work. This is a slide that we show here. We used it when we try to see the differences in how NUMI products work in terms of gene expression, how the genes, as I said before, working. So this is a quantitative real-time PCR methodology that is a very accurate and very sensitive methodology, but which we basically quantitate the exact numbers of RNAs inside our cells. Yeah, let's talk about oxidative stress. This is a slide which I like it. It represents with a very, very nice way what's happening inside our cells when there's too much of oxidative stress. So on the top you see a tomato that when it starts ripening, it ends up to be garbage and we throw it out. But on a cell, when it's attacked by so many free radicals, when there's so much oxidative stress, there are many damages that occur inside the cell, and the cells try basically to defend, but it ends up with so many damages that, and they're gonna end up to some pathology for sure.
And you've tested a lot of supplements. Have you seen this in any other supplement?
No, I haven't seen these dramatic effects. We've seen some reduction, yes, we've seen, but never. I never looked so early. 14 days in 1 month, never.
Yeah.
Usually we look after 3 months after taking a supplement, what's going on.
Now, tell us for a minute, let's do a little rewind and tell me about how you came to find out about NUMI.
I was introduced to NUMI by my friend Rose. You met her.
Uh-huh.
She's a university professor, used to be microbiology. So she came to me and she told me, there's something that it's very, very, very interesting. I said, what is it? She told me about the technology. I didn't know anything about the hydrostat technology by that time, which was late November, early December 2024, okay, a few months ago. So I looked into it with, to be honest with you, with some, hesitation, I would say. I said, can be that true? Can be, how can they manage to do that? Because I read about the technology, this is a passive diffusion inside the cells, by, overcoming the, all these small size of the cell membrane, but cannot anything to pass by beyond, the cell membrane. So the next step was to try for myself. So I made an order, I used the product, and the very first thing I remember was the day after I used the product, I went for a walk. Mm-hmm. So I used to walk 10,000 steps every day. So after using this product and walking 10,000 steps, I found out that I was not tired at all. I was ready to go for another 10,000 steps. When, usually after 10,000 steps, you're tired, you want to go and rest. And I said, this is something big here. It can be, it's not a coincidence, it's not placebo, it's nothing. And then, the story started, I wanted by myself to look what's going on with inflammation and all that. And this is how it went.
Now, prior to this, you had been on a liposomal glutathione.
Yes.
Had you seen anything like this in your own experience?
No, we haven't seen this. I don't think glutathione, liposomal glutathione works. My impression.
Now, tell us the difference between a liposomal encapsulated molecule and one that's with hydrostat.
Well, the encapsulated glutathione in liposomes is a big structure, first of all, because the liposome contains a lipid bilayer, like our cells, the cell membrane, artificial, of course, lipid bilayer, and inside there, they have encapsulated the molecule. So the way it goes is it's always in liquid form. It's gonna start, when you take it, start fusing. The membrane of the liposome fuses with the membranes of our epithelial cells. And after this fusion, it releases the inside, which is the glutathione molecule, inside the cell, supposedly. Of course, this is a process that requires energy, and it's not as perfect, as efficient, I would say, as theoretically is. Theoretically, it is, but practically, it's not as efficient as we think it is. The hydrostat technology, on the other side, for me, it's genius, because it makes a structure which is basically some molecules of water, and it brings the molecule inside the membrane, okay, by passive diffusion. I mean, if you would say that before some years, they would say that this is impossible. It cannot be done, because the cell has its own restrictions, very, very strong restrictions. It cannot allow to enter anything, basically. It has to be like a virus, so small. You see the virus, how easy infect us, because of its size. The size is unbelievably low.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the interview. And we're excited. Dr. Nikolopoulos joined our medical and scientific board, and he has been a delight to work with and has really impressed some of the other doctors on our medical board. In fact, one doctor from the Cleveland Clinic joined our medical board as a result of spending a little time with Dr. Nikolopoulos and myself. We were on a Zoom together, and Gareth Morris Stiff, who is a liver specialist, when he saw what we had and what Dr. Nikolopoulos was able to measure through real-time PCR, he just threw up his arms and said, "I'm in." And so it's just exciting. We have seen wonderful results with our technology, and people always say, "Show us the science." Well, now we have the science. We see what we're doing. Now, the truth is, there's 194,000 published studies on glutathione, and quite a few of those show that glutathione, when it is efficiently and effectively delivered into the cell, will impact inflammation, will impact genetic expression, and so on. The problem has always been delivery, that not everything that you put in your mouth ends up in your cells, that the cell particles the cellular size is so small, and within the cell there is a even tinier pore, and many products are use force diffusion. In other words, they sit on top of the cell versus actually getting in through the pore. The particle size with water encapsulation, the way we encapsulate with hydrostat, the particle size is so tiny that it's able to actually get in the cell much more easily through a passive diffusion, which is what you're talking about. And now we see how it works and why it works. So thank you so much for all you do. I know over there, let's see, it's almost 7 o'clock. Thank you for giving us your evening. And God bless you and your sweet family, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And, I'm very glad just to talk with you and basically investigate further what's going on.
Yes, you said
we're going to have more data, more things in the near future. I'm not going to say anything yet, It's just gonna keep you alert.
But you're seeing good things.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I can't wait to get the data. And for you
Okay,
and me, nothing speaks louder than data. So
exactly.
thank you so much, my dear brother.
Very welcome.
God bless you and your family.
Thank you. The same to you.
Oh, thank you, Sotiris. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So today I'm going to talk about cysteine. Cysteine is critical. And why am I talking about cysteine? Well, cysteine is important because it is one of the main ingredients in this NutraSwish. So it is so important, and is also important because it's in other products that we have. So understanding cysteine is critical to our foundation and what it is. So what is cysteine? Well, cysteine is a semi-essential amino acid. What do you mean by semi? In other words, it's not totally essential because you're going to get it through a lot of foods. The problem is, as we age, we can't assimilate the cysteine that we really need. So we need other sources to actually increase our cysteine levels. And of course, we create some of our own natural cysteine unless you have some issues like I will talk about in a little bit. But so cysteine is critical and it's needed. It is, number one, it is an antioxidant support. So it helps with antioxidant, not just through, and I know a lot of you know that it is one of the major things in the creation of glutathione, and it is. But in and of itself, it is also an antioxidant. So it does help with creation of glutathione, but it is an antioxidant on itself. It also helps to reduce free radicals in and of itself. So it is a mucolytic. And being a mucolytic, it's an agent that actually helps in the respiratory tract. And cysteine helps with liver detoxification and liver issues. Some of the other things that it really does is it helps with protein folding. Well, what's the big deal about protein folding? Well, protein folding, if you have proper protein folding, it actually is going to help you create proper musculature, proper muscles, but it's also going to help you to prevent abnormal protein folding, which we all know can create issues with Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline. That's what half of my patients are complaining about all the time is cognitive decline, cognitive decline, cognitive decline. Well, we need proper cysteine for that, so that's essential. It also acts in enzymatic functions. So it has many enzymatic functions. So we have enzymes that do all kinds of things in our body. Enzymes help to cleave off certain parts of certain proteins so that you actually have more of a peptide, and peptides are essential to our body. We have around 7,000 to 9,000 different peptides. We're finding more all the time that are natural to our body. You know, a GLP that everybody's talking about for weight loss, GLPs, you know, they're actually a peptide. They're actually a peptide that you have naturally in your gastrointestinal tract. Well, cysteine actually helps that and helps with those GLPs in your gastrointestinal tract for them to be natural to your body. So cysteine is essential for that. And it's a structure of proteins. So it helps with the structuring of different proteins, and it helps with that through a multitude of different things. Some of the proteins that it's very essential with are the proteins involved with skin, nails, hair functioning, and collagen to help you age more gracefully. We all want to age gracefully, correct? Yeah. Well, the antioxidant I did talk to you about already, which is the glutathione synthesis. It helps with direct antioxidant activity, but it also helps to bind heavy metals. In and of itself, we know that glutathione does that, but cysteine, even without glutathione, will help you bind up some of the heavy metals and take them out through your kidneys, out of your body, so that you can be free of the heavy metals that a lot of people are inundated with. Believe me, I see them every day. I talked to patients today. There were about 4 or 5 of them. They all had heavy metals in them, all of them. And we've got to get rid of the heavy metals. This is a natural way to get rid of heavy metals. It's a wonderful way. And it also has cellular protection. So it helps with oxidative damage at the DNA, and it helps with oxidative damage in the lipids. So what are the lipids? So the lipid layers are the mitochondrial layers. Everybody keeps talking about mitochondria, 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 mitochondria. It is very popular in today's world. But I was talking about the mitochondria 15 years ago, before it was popular. Well, what do we know? We know that cysteine helps with that, helps with the mitochondria and oxidative damage in the mitochondria. The mitochondria is where you produce 90% of your energy every single day. It's very important. So cysteine also helps with sulfur metabolism. Sulfur is one of those transsulfuration pathways that actually help with recycling your glutathione and all that stuff. And also taurine synthesis. What is taurine? Well, taurine's calming. It's amino acid that is calming. Taurine is essential for you to calm down at night to go to sleep. I put a lot of people on taurine that are having sleep disturbances, but you probably won't need that, because what else does cysteine do? Well, it works in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus. You might ask, well, what's that? Well, it's important. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is actually the center for your circadian rhythm. That's where you have your sleep-wake cycle. And that sleep-wake cycle is very essential to your overall health, your longevity. You need to get a proper amount of sleep, and you need to have your sleep-wake cycles optimized. Well, cysteine actually helps with that. It helps with the proper circulation for the proper amounts in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. There's a lot that happens at the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that actually helps with a lot of other metabolic functions in and of itself. And it helps with coenzyme A. So it helps with coenzyme A, which is actually involved with fatty acid metabolism. With the suprachiasmatic nucleus actually helps with some of that as well. So it's going to help in 2 different ways with fatty acid metabolization, which is critical. Iron sulfur cluster formation. What's the big deal about iron cluster salt? Well, what is that anyway? Well, that actually is we all need proper iron for proper hemoglobin. It's part of the heme concentration. And you have to have the proper amounts of iron. You have to be able to absorb the iron. And cysteine is going to actually help with that. We used to think that it was more vitamin C. Well, now when I'm giving an iron infusion for somebody that's severely anemic, I'm also going to give cysteine. Why? Because we know cysteine helps with that. I used to always do vitamin C, but now I'm doing cysteine just as much as vitamin C, because they're both essential for that. It's going to help with the metabolization of your iron so you don't build up too much iron, because building up too much iron can be very detrimental. It can build up in your heart, in your liver, in your lungs, all those things. So detoxification we talked a little bit about, but it actually helps with what we call phase 2 liver detoxification. So that is how your liver gets rid of toxins. And cysteine is extremely important for liver and aiding in liver detoxification. It helps with a lot of things going on in the liver, not just the heavy metals, but it's going to help with like acetaminophen, because acetaminophen can build up in your liver, and then what happens is then you begin to have liver damage. So it helps with that. Cysteine helps with deterring fatty liver syndrome. So it works in a lot of those different ways, and it's critical for that, and I love it. And then xenobiotics. So what are xenobiotics? Xenobiotics they're foreign compounds. Xenobiotics are foreign compounds that are plastics, because we're talking a lot about plastics these days. There's some places, I was not too long ago in New York, and New York doesn't allow any plastics anymore. You can't have any plastics anymore. So everything is going away from plastics. Why? Because plastics are highly toxic to our body. So how do we get rid of those xenobiotics? Well, we get rid of them through cysteine. So cysteine helps with that. By the way, getting rid of plastics isn't going to help because half of your car is made of plastic. So when you go and sit inside your car and your car is really hot because it's beginning of summer here in America, it is. I know not in Australia where some of you guys are, but here in America, this is summertime. So we're going to have a hot summer. And so your car heats up. As your car heats up, it's going to cause issues. It's going to be releasing the fumes from those plastics. You inhale them, you breathe them in, and I see them on my tox panels all the time because I do a lot with toxicology, and you can see them. So what about cysteine and neurological function? So cysteine is really important for neurological function, and it helps in a lot of different ways, but really it's going to help with your dopamine and your serotonin. So everybody knows about serotonin because we talk a lot about serotonin because of depression. But what about dopamine? Well, dopamine has to do with Parkinson's and dopamine actions. But people with ADHD have abnormal amounts of dopamine and dopamine receptors. So it doesn't work correctly, or you don't have enough dopamine. So you need more dopamine to actually help you kind of get through that day. So, you can actually concentrate and not go from this part to that part and go all over the place. So that's critical for a lot of people. It's the dopamine. So cysteine will help with in improving dopamine and serotonin pathways, and that's critical. It also helps with neuronal protection. It shields the neurons from oxidative stress. All those neurons, and you have neurons all over, but primarily in our brain. Myelin synthesis. So, around our nerves, and a lot of people complain about different pains and things like that they can have in different areas. Well, that's called demyelinization. So you lose your myelin. MS is a big thing with that. So MS, multiple sclerosis, you actually have demyelinization, but you can actually lose your myelin from other disease processes. But cysteine, although it's not curative, it's not going to cure anything, but it will help with that myelin sheath. And we want the proper myelin sheath because that's how your nerves send out its signals to all parts of your body and to your brain. So you want that. And then cysteine actually helps with cognitive functioning. It supports brain detoxification. There's something I talked about earlier about the subchiasmic nucleus. There's something called the glymphatic system in the SCN. So we call that the suprachiasmatic nucleus. So the glymphatic system, actually, that's how you detoxify your brain while you're sleeping at night. So they say you're supposed to sleep on your side for that to work more appropriately. Well, we also know that cysteine is part of the reason that you can actually detoxify your brain when you're sleeping at night. Why? Because that's what's needed for it. This is just science. And there's lots of scientific articles that will back up everything that I'm saying. This is nothing new. It's nothing outstanding. It's just the facts about cysteine. I love amino acids. And so I talk a lot about amino acids, and I think we all need proper amino acids, all of them. So that's my big thing. What about the immune system? We talked about neurological health, and I do a lot with neurological health, and I could go on for hours just about neurological health. But let's talk more about more things in the body that cysteine does. What about your immune system? Well, the immune cell functioning, you need cysteine to help support your T cells and your NK cells, natural killer cells. Your T cells and natural killer cells are how you actually help to get rid of viruses, bacteria, all those things. But the cysteine actually is going to help that differentiate into all the different parts that you need, because you're going to need a lot of different parts to go after the different things that you need it to go after. And so that's what cysteine is going to help with your immune system and actually the inflammatory response. So cysteine is actually a modulator for that inflammatory response. So you don't want no inflammation. If you have no inflammation, your body can't respond to an infective process. And you need to. What happens is you have an inflammatory process when something happens, or if you have an injury, inflammation comes in to bring all the cells, to bring healing to that wounded area. Well, that's the immune system too. You need some inflammation because you need to react. You don't want to overreact. So cysteine modulates that so that you still can react, but not overreact. You do not want to overreact. If you overreact, that can end up in a chronic inflammatory state, which then can lead you to chronic inflammation, and you can end up with autoimmune diseases. So I know, I have a few. So I know what inflammation does. So cysteine is actually effective in that, in modulating that inflammatory response. So it also helps with wound healing. So cysteine is essential in the tissues for repair and regeneration, and that's why it works so well. You can spray it on your body, you can spray it on, and they've done this in wound centers all over. What they do is they'll spray on, they actually have a powdered form of cysteine that they can use in some of those centers, and that actually helps in the wound repair. Cysteine is actually antimicrobial as well. It has antimicrobial activities. So we have different parts of the immune system. The innate immune system is part of what we're born with, the innate immune, what you're born with, your immune system. So the cysteine helps with that part of your immune system. If you have an innate immune system that's dysfunctional, cysteine may actually help with part of that dysfunction. And that's the cool thing, that you want everything to work in a correct way, in modulation. So modulation is very critical. What about cysteine and your cardiovascular health? So cysteine is actually essential in your cardiovascular health as well. Why? What's it do? Well, it helps with nitric oxide. Everybody's talking about nitric oxide, and they're taking this, I hate to say it, but it's a really crappy form of beet extract that everybody's taken. I actually happen to know the lady that developed it, so I know it, and I know her, and she's very nice. She's a very nice woman. But let me tell you, you need more than beets to actually help create nitric oxide. Cysteine is one of those things that helps you create nitric oxide. There's other things that you need to actually create nitric oxide, but cysteine is really one of those critical pathways that you need in creating nitric oxide. And by the way, beets don't have very much cysteine in them at all. You're going to get more cysteine from like eggs and chicken and some of those things, okay? So that's where you're going to end up with most of your cysteine. What about homocysteine metabolism? Well, homocysteine metabolism can cause cardiovascular disease. And so what happens is homocysteine goes through this pathway and actually cleaves off things, and then you create cystathione, and the cystathione then goes through ways and it actually creates cysteine. So that's how that works. So homocysteine, you don't want to have too little homocysteine, but you don't want to have too much homocysteine. If you have too much homocysteine, there's a lot of factors that take into effect of too much homocysteine. And homocysteine is actually when it's too high, can drive cardiovascular disease. Then you need to help by creating the cystathione, and that can be helped with that cysteine function. So cysteine actually helps with endothelial function as well, and it helps maintain blood vasculature so that you're vasculating things correctly and your vascular system is working correctly. So it works with that, and it actually helps with blood pressure regulation. Now, it's not a blood pressure medication. It's not going to work like that. It's not going to cure blood pressure. No, it will not. If you are on a blood pressure medication, you have to take your blood pressure medication. But cysteine can help, and it influences what we call the vascular tone. So why did you develop high blood pressure? Well, it's because of a vascular tone. When your vascular tone is tight, then what happens is your blood pressure rises. You need to respond with your vascular tone. So it's a give and take of your vascular tone. So that vascular tone, actually cysteine will help with that. Nitric oxide helps with that. We give nitric oxide for people that are on blood pressure medications that actually we can actually help with their blood pressure medications being more effective when they have nitric oxide so that they can respond and actually lower their blood pressure correctly. I talked a little bit about respiratory tracts and cysteine. So it actually is a mucus regulation effect. So it has mucus regulation effects. That's what cysteine does. So it breaks down the really thick secretions. So if you have secretions that are too thick, it actually helps to break those down in the airway so they can be coughed up like they should normally. We all have some coughs every day. Coughing is a normal thing. After a recent incident, we don't think coughing's so normal, right? Somebody coughs, everybody freaks out. Well, that shouldn't be the way it is because we're all going to cough some. And coughing can be actually getting rid of some of that thicker mucus, but cysteine is going to help thin that down so it can actually come out and you won't have to possibly cough as much. Possibly, we can't say that for sure. So it actually has some lung protection as well. It's an antioxidant in the lungs and helps with some of the respiratory tract tissues. So it's really cool about it, how that works. It helps with airway clearance. I talked a little bit about that. But when you get pathogens in there or you get debris in there, which happens more as we age, by the way. I just turned 68 not long ago, so I know about age, right? So what happens is when you eat something sometimes things go down the wrong way and we're coughing and coughing and coughing. Well, some of that debris actually always gets down into your lungs. Cysteine helps you to eliminate that, to break that down and get rid of it out of your lungs. Really cool thing, isn't it? So whoever thought that? I didn't either until I was actually reading some articles for this today. You always got to read articles. I love to read articles. So what about reproductive and development? So, they keep blaming women for infertility, but actually men are just as much to blame as women for infertility. It's not women. And women, if your husband won't get checked, they need to go get checked if you're having infertility issues. Because sperm motility, sperm counts, sperm movement, the types of sperm morphology, it all matters. Well, what does cysteine do with sperm? Well, it helps with their motility. And it actually helps with proper formation of the sperm. So it's proper formation and proper and motility that sperm need to actually fertilize the egg. We'll go back to that. We'll go back to, what was it? Probably junior high. That's where we learned about sex ed. Fetal development. It actually helps in fetal development as well. It supports growth and organ formation. So cysteine is critical if you're pregnant to actually have cysteine while you're pregnant, right? Everybody's afraid of taking anything while they're pregnant. There's certain things we really need, and cysteine is a natural thing. It's a natural supplement. It's a natural thing that we need, especially when you're pregnant, for organ development. And what about hormone synthesis? Does it help with hormone synthesis? Well, there's a very few articles but it does say that it will help some with hormone synthesis, but it's actually involved with some of the endocrine pathways in creation and recycling and clearance of some of these hormones. So cysteine is important for some of those things. That's why when you give cysteine to young guys that have actually injured themselves because of taking SARMs or something like that, if you give cysteine to those young guys, they can actually create their own testosterone again. It's a natural way for them to create it after they've injured themselves from illegal SARMs. I don't know if they're illegal in all countries, but I know in America they are. So that we have to be careful about that. What about skin? Skin and connective tissue. Cysteine is important for skin. It helps with the cross-linking. So you have different forms and different types of collagen, but some of the collagen actually has multiple cross-linkings. These cross-linkings actually help with the stabilization, so you can have firm face and firm tissue in your skin, because the collagen is underneath your skin. But collagen is around a lot of organ systems, and it's in your muscles, and collagen is everywhere, and you need good collagen. So it helps to strengthen your connective tissues and your collagen. It actually helps with some of the tendons, your ligaments, and some of that stuff with your collagen formation there. It helps with elastin formation. What's elastin? Well, elastin helps with the elasticity of the skin. So we lose our elasticity as we age, right? That's why we have all the droopiness. And so when we have droopiness, we've lost a lot of our elastin. Well, that comes from an elastin. Actually, you have to have adequate amounts of cysteine to actually help with elastin. It is critical. It's critical for you and for the formation of your elastin. And wound healing, we already talked about wound healing and how it actually helps with wound healing. But cysteine is also an UV protection. There's so much going on with UV and UV light and UV and protecting yourself from the sun. And, people are wearing full garment, because they don't want to get the sun. Well, you need the sun because it actually helps with a whole lot of other things. But, and so some people, depends how organic you actually are. Some people will not use any sunscreens because sunscreens are full of toxins. Not all sunscreens are, but I would look at them directly to see which sunscreen you're using so you have a healthy one, because we do need some sunscreens, but actually cysteine can help. You take it orally, and there's a product that comes out of Spain that actually did that very thing. What they did was they put cysteine in an oral sunscreen product so that they could take this orally to protect against UV damage in their skin. Kind of cool, huh? Yeah, things work. What about cellular functioning? So something called cell signaling is very important. And then I'm going to talk, cell signaling is important because it helps with redox formation, redox synthesis. It helps with pathways to actually create different things in your body. So, and cells have a cell-to-cell communication that's extremely important, okay? So that's extremely important. But I want to go a little bit into the gene expression. So it influences transcription factors and activity. There's some issues here, okay? Because there are some issues with cysteine and cysteine and helping with different formations. So cysteine, actually, if you have something called, there's a CTH gene. So you have epigenetics and you have genetics. And I'm not going to go into that because that's a 2-hour lecture for physicians that I speak on. And it's very involved. But you have something called CTH. CTH is a genetic glitch that if you have that, you can't create cysteine well enough. Well, if you can't create cysteine in your body, and that comes from the homocysteine and methionine pathways, if you can't create cysteine in your pad, then you're going to have to take even more in. So you have to take extra cysteine into your body to actually be able to utilize it correctly. So cysteine is extremely important, and cysteine is one of those things that is going to help when you have proper amounts of cysteine. You're going to have proper interpretation of some of your genetics. So it helps with transcription and genetic interpretation. It helps with a whole lot of that stuff. So if you have CBS mutation, which is a transsulfuration pathway, and a CTH genetic glitch, then you have a very difficult time with cysteine, and you're not going to create enough cysteine in your body. You're not going to utilize it correctly, and so you have to take extra. The only reason I know that is because I have those genetic glitches, and I had to really discover how I can create enough in my body so that I could actually detox appropriately and heal appropriately from the inside out, because that's how we a lot of times heal, from not just from the outside in, but from the inside out. And that's how you want it to happen. So it really helps with that. And so genes are extremely important, and there's a multitude of different genes that if you have glitches on them, you're going to have issues with cysteine. And so how do we overcome that? You overcome that with adequate amounts of cysteine taken in to your body. That's why you can't take, you can barely, it's really difficult to take too much cysteine. Cell cycle regulation, it helps with division and apoptosis, so getting rid of cells that need to be gotten rid of, and it helps with your cells dividing. The other cool thing about when your cells divide, something happens with the telomeres. So telomeres are the end caps to your DNA. As they shorten, your life is shorter and shorter and shorter. And you can actually measure your telomere length. I do it in a lot of my patients, so it can be done. And there's multiple ways to do it. I'm doing it a different way now than what I was doing it. I was just doing that one thing, but now I can look at proteomics and all these other different things by looking a different way, but I can look at that and look at your telomere length. So you can have improper cell division. If you have improper cell division, then you're going to actually shorten your telomeres a little bit faster. So cysteine will help with that. Cysteine may not help directly in lengthening or keeping your telomeres long. There's other things that can be done for that. And we know that glutathione helps with that as well. So glutathione is one of those things that helps with your telomeres as well. So you need multiple different aspects to help with telomere shortening. And telomere shortening, if you're shorter telomeres, you're more prone to infective disease process. That was a study done during COVID that they looked at telomere lengths and those that had worse effects from COVID. And why did elderly pass away more than younger people? And there were young people that passed away, but they had already had short telomeres. They were born with short telomeres probably. But, so telomere length has to do with your response to infective disease processes. It has to do with a whole lot of those different things. So telomeres are important for anti-aging, right? We all want to age gracefully. Let's age gracefully. And then membrane stability. So cellular integrity. So cysteine is actually very important for cellular integrity. Cellular integrity is essential. And we need it, right? So it's very critical for cellular integrity. What about energy and energy metabolism? So energy and energy metabolism. So there's something called ATP synthesis. Everybody knows what ATP is because that's how you create energy, right? Where does that happen? Well, I talked about the mitochondria and how cysteine was very critical for the mitochondria, for detoxification, for stabilization, for all those different things at the mitochondria. Well, ATP synthesis helps with your energy and energy production at the mitochondria. where you produce 90% of your energy every day. We need the mitochondria. Well, we need ATP. We need energy. So how are you going to produce energy? Well, with cysteine. So I always get upset at my patients when they say, I have no energy. I have no energy. And I'm going like, well, are you doing your swish? Are you doing this? This one thing is going to help you with your energy. Yes, it is. It's going to help you. And what about fatty acid oxidation, which is part of energy? So there's something called the FTO. That's in genetics again. I really do a lot with genetics, but FTO has to do with fatty acid detoxification and detoxification through the fats. Cysteine helps with that. You need cysteine with that, but cysteine is also involved with fat metabolization. We all want to metabolize our fat because we don't want to end up with too much fat in certain areas of our body. I know, because we all end up with it somewhere we don't want to have it, and we want to get rid of it. Well, cysteine actually helps with that. So cysteine can actually aid in what you want for your fatty acid metabolization. It's not going to make you lose weight, but, you know, it might help a little bit, right? And what about glucose metabolism? So this is all with metabolization. So ATP synthesis, fatty acid oxidation, fatty acid metabolism, glucose metabolism. So glucose metabolism, I constantly see people with glucose levels, fasting glucose levels in the high 90s. I don't care, even if they're in the mid 90s. They're too high. This is according to a study that was done at UCLA, and this study had thousands of patients in it, and it was over a long period of time, and they found out that for every 1 point over 84, you have a 6% increased risk of becoming a diabetic in the next year. A 6% increased risk. Well, there's lots of people that have been going on for 10 years with elevated glucose in the 90s. Well, all of a sudden, they're starting to have other issues that diabetics have, like losing their vision, having retinal issues. They're having other issues, neuropathies. Why? Because neuropathies happen when you have high glucose. So it actually happens to help with glucose metabolism. It influences insulin sensitivity. So what are we becoming? Everybody, you go anywhere, and it's all over Facebook, TikTok, everywhere. They're talking about insulin sensitivity. Maybe because I'm in the medical field, I get that stuff, but you know, it's out there. So insulin sensitivity is a big deal. When you have insulin levels over 10, you're becoming insulin resistant. Insulin resistance is a big deal. And how do you avert that? Well, you can avert it by proper amounts of cysteine. Cysteine is critical. Cysteine is needed for that. Cysteine is needed for you to have proper sensitivity with your insulin. Insulin helps you usher in your glucose into the cell where it needs to be utilized and used for energy, because you do need glucose. It's used for energy. It's used for neurological health. It's used for a lot of health, but you need some glucose. You can't just do without all glucose. You need some glucose, but it's actually, cysteine is going to help with that insulin sensitivity. And I have seen that firsthand. And then we talked about mitochondrial function and how cysteine protects the powerhouse of the cell. So the powerhouse of the cell is the mitochondria. The mitochondria has a lot of things, more than just energy production. So mitochondria actually interpret the nucleus of the cell. What's the nucleus of the cell? The nucleus is what houses your DNA. So if you're going to have cysteine that actually protects that mitochondria, it's going to help proper interpretation of your DNA, of the nucleus of the cell. When you have proper interpretation, you're going to live well. You're going to be healthy. You're going to enjoy life. You're going to have energy. That's what happens at the mitochondria. So I love cysteine. Why do I love cysteine? Because I think it's really important. I think it's important for a lot of different things. I love that it detoxifies through the liver, and I've seen that time and time and time and time again. It helps with a lot of those things. I'm glad that we have cysteine because it helps with wound healing when I see wounds, when I have wounds in my office. And one thing that I didn't talk about was that how cysteine is utilized through the gut. So cysteine by itself is hard to absorb through the gastrointestinal tract. It's extremely hard. We usually absorb cysteine as another form called L-cysteine or acetyl L-cysteine. Acetyl L-cysteine, after it is absorbed, but then becomes L-cysteine and then cysteine. And then it's utilized inside the cell. The absorption of cysteine is very difficult. So that's why it's important to have a product that actually helps you absorb cysteine, because otherwise you're not going to absorb proper amounts and you're not going to have proper amounts. And as we age, we have less cysteine. So, and I want to have cysteine in my body. I don't know about you, but I do. And how do I get that cysteine? I'm going to get it through proper forms that actually help me to have the proper amounts of cysteine and actually absorb it. So if I can absorb the cysteine, I'm going to have a lot better life because it's going to help correct a whole lot of things when we don't have proper nutrients. So a lot of our disease systems and a lot of our disease is due to lack of proper amino acids. We all need and require proper amino acids. Proper amino acids are essential for a lot that's going on in our body. Cysteine is part of that. It's a critical role in that. And the whole thing about cysteine is that it helps you form glutathione in your body. As we age, we don't form it as well, right? But you still need glutathione. So glutathione actually helps you utilize and process a majority of your peptides. Everybody's talking about peptides. I see it all over Instagram all the time. I see it all over TikTok. So it's peptides, peptides, peptides. In fact, I was on there the other day, and all of a sudden this ad pops up for me to buy peptides from an illegal source, actually. It said they were for scientific research purposes only. So you don't want to do that. Take a product that you can take that's legal. Why? Because cysteine is legal in a lot of ways. And cysteine actually helps you utilize your peptides appropriately. Don't go and get something that's toxic to your body, because I can go into what's created and how a lot of those peptides are created, and they have a lot of toxins in them, a lot of toxins. And we need to have a toxin-free peptide. So that's my story about cysteine. And I know I'll probably get some questions the next time I see you all. So I will see you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hello, I'm Leanna Contos. I'm a board-certified naturopathic doctor, and I'm a diet and lifestyle intervention practitioner and a digestive health specialist in the United States. I'm honored to talk with you today. So I'm going to share with you why I'm here, and I'm going to share 5 factors that you need to know, and I'm going to also share 2 things that you need to remember about glutathione. So why am I here? A longtime patient and friend reached out to me. They had just gone through a very traumatic situation in their life, and I'm not going to name any conditions, of course, but they were walking with a cane, and they were only in their early 60s. They were having a hard time finding words to say sentences, and they couldn't work any longer. And a friend of theirs gave them a bottle of glutathione. All I can tell you is within a couple weeks, they were not walking with a cane any longer. And within about 5 weeks, they were working 1 day a week again, part-time. And within 5 months, they were working full-time again. And we have so many stories like that in my practice, in this company, and among my own family and friends. And I want you to remember these 5 factors because they're why you should not ever be without glutathione swish. The first is free radical damage. And basically, that's a molecule missing an electron, and that molecule that's missing an electron will scavenge and ravage all of your tissues and cells like a tornado and cause damage to go search for another electron. I want you to know that the reason you get free radical damage is inevitable. You get free radical damage in your body from eating, breathing, moving, exercise. And what do you think the one thing that can help mitigate free radical damage? Because it's the master antioxidant in our bodies, glutathione. So number 1 was free radical damage. And you get it just by living, eating, breathing, moving. Number 2 is industrial toxins. Industrial and forever toxins, or industrial and forever chemicals. They too are unavoidable. They're in our clothing, our cookware. They've done studies where industrial and forever chemicals were in every umbilical cord tested in infants. They did a study over thousands of Americans. All of them had about 141 industrial and forever chemicals in their blood. It's pervasive. What do you think removes, destroys, kills, detoxifies all chemicals, toxins, and industrial toxins and chemicals? Glutathione. So that's number 2. Free radicals, industrial toxins, and chemicals. Number 3 is glyphosate, or pesticides and herbicides. Did you know that glyphosate has been sprayed on our food, our cotton, clothing, soy, carrots, sweet potatoes, quinoa for decades, since the 1970s when it was registered in the United States? It's sprayed all over the world. Did you know that glyphosate, the weed killer, is linked to cancer? It's linked to birth defects. Glyphosate's linked to high blood pressure, irritable bowel syndrome, and Crohn's and colitis. What do you think the molecule is that can mitigate, destroy, kill off glyphosate? You guessed it, glutathione. Number 4, remember, number 1, free radicals. Number 2, industrial and forever chemicals and toxins. Number 3, glyphosate, pesticides, herbicides. Number 4 is what happened in the world in 2020. All the variants, all the viruses and vaccines that went around the world damaged us on a cellular level. What do you think mitigates viruses, variants, and vaccine ingredients? Glutathione. So you have free radical damage, you can't escape, eating, breathing, moving, exercising. You have industrial and forever chemicals and toxins that are everywhere in our blood and umbilical cords. Then you have glyphosate, the weed killer, and now you have what was a result of that horrible thing that went around the world in 2020 that left viruses, variants, and vaccines in much of the population that caused cellular damage. Glutathione is your answer for all 4 of those factors. The 5th factor is easy to remember because it's 5G. It's the cellular radiation from your cell phone. That causes damage to your brain cells, your heart cells, and your muscle cells. What do you think mitigates that damage? That creates a molecule called peroxynitrite. What do you think the only molecule that can mitigate, destroy, and kill off peroxynitrite and that damage from cellular radiation that is damaging heart cells, brain cells, and muscle cells? You guessed it, Glutathione. For those 5 reasons alone, those 5 factors alone are enough to use glutathione swish every day. And guess what? You and I started losing glutathione in our bodies about age 20. So the last 2 things that I would love for you to remember that'll benefit you and your family is, number 1, I'm an American, so I'm going to jump on the bus with all the Americans, okay? And say, look, we Americans especially, we want things to happen yesterday. We want to take an aspirin and we want that headache to be gone in minutes. We want to take some medicine and we want to feel better. We want to take something and we want to feel better right away. That's not what glutathione's about. Glutathione, God put glutathione in every cell of your body. God put glutathione in every animal on earth. God put glutathione in every plant. Oxygen-based life would cease without glutathione. So what I want to impress upon you are these last 2 points I want to make. It's not about taking glutathione swish and feeling better in minutes, or even feeling better the next day, or feeling better in a month or 2 months. You need it. You may be a good person, I'm sure you are. You may be a good mother, a good father, a good aunt, a good uncle, good at your profession. I'm sure you are. But you're not good with glutathione. If you're over 20 years old, you're not good with glutathione. The glutathione swish is not about feeling something immediately. We need it. This is the safest, most affordable, fastest, most effective delivery system of glutathione in the world. Think of the word safe. S-A-F-E. It's the safest, most affordable, fastest, most effective delivery system of glutathione in the world. The last thing I want you to remember is you cannot breathe without the glutathione molecule. You can't breathe without it. If you remember nothing else, glutathione links oxygen and hemoglobin, and you physically cannot take a breath without it, and you started losing it about age 20. So absolutely get back to the kind person that shared this information with you, because I hope this has impressed upon you that you and your family definitely need glutathione swish daily. I hope this helped you. God bless.